Good morning to everyone. I'm James Thomson. I'll be your host today. I'm joined today by four webinar participants that I'd like to introduce. We have Michal Baumwald Oron, who is the founder and CEO of Fortunet, an M&A company that helps brands with the sales efforts as they prepare to sell their businesses. We have Joe Rideout, who is the co-founder and chief product officer of Perpetua, Levy, the VP of paid search from Tinuiti, and Michael Erickson, the CEO of AdBadger. Today, we're going to be talking about what goes on with brands as they prepare for that challenging period leading up to the sale of their business. How do the aspects of advertising play into all the different things that need to happen as that brand prepares for that sale? We're going to talk about PPC. We're going to talk about SEM. We're going to talk about how the agency works with the brand during that period, how things change during that period, and look at what can brands be doing to become more effective in leveraging their advertising strategy to help improve the positioning of their business as they prepare for that exit. As we go through today's discussion, we're going to look at a number of very specific mechanics related to PPC and SEM. But I want to start our conversation today with a few high-level questions to set the stage for some of the more detailed discussion that we're going to have in a moment. So let me start by asking Michael and Joe and Aaron, I'd love to understand a little bit more about when brands are preparing to do that sale, do you as an agency, do you even find out about this? Do brands tell you, hey, listen, we're going through a transition period, we're preparing for a possible sale, we're going to need to change the way we think about how we spend our dollars on advertising? Love your thoughts on that, gentlemen.
I'm happy to start us off. Curious to hear what the others say.
Please, Joe.
Um, I'd say in general, no, which is maybe a little surprising. Some of our smaller seller customers will let us know, especially if they're kind of openly shopping around for potential buyers. But for larger brands, I would say it's more typical that they wouldn't explicitly disclose that until
Mm-hmm.
after the deal is closed. And in some instances, even our main point of contact at the brand might not be in the loop on the process, depending on the size of the organization. It does happen though, and I think it depends on the relationship and trust between the client and the account manager they're working with. What I have seen happen more often is that clients might allude to a large capital raise when they're discussing budgets and strategy, maybe increasing ad spend, wanting to add streaming TV and so forth.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
but I would say, I think that more brands should volunteer this information to their agencies or tool providers because, we want to be strategic thought partners and work with them to make sure that they're sort of optimally leveraging advertising to get the best possible outcome.
Aaron and Michael, other thoughts on this in terms of when you're being told that there's change in the wind?
I
Yeah,
would
go ahead, Michael.
I would say in general, most providers would love to hear that information to help, co-create some of the goals for the next 6, 12, 18 months. And it's definitely, sometimes you'll notice maybe writing on the wall, it's like, why are we doing this particular goal instead of this particular goal? And you sort of begin to realize that maybe, oh, the goals are of the characteristics of someone who will be wanting to sell in the next sort of 6, 12, 18 months type scenario. And those goals are, and I'm sure we're going to talk about, are quite different than maybe someone in a ramp up or scale phase. So I would say it's rather important information to share with a lot of your providers, and generally it would be well received to, and I'm sure the provider would be happy to co-create some of those goals with their clients for sure.
Michal, when you have brands approaching you and looking to potentially sell their businesses, would you recommend that they notify their agencies about this potential sales development?
Yes and no. So generally speaking, yes. I mean, it's marketing. It's altogether a dynamic aspect of the business, which is crucial to the growth and maintenance of whatever was achieved. So it is very much tied to the strategy of the business, and for that reason, I think that it is highly important that anyone who is managing the marketing activity will be aware of the strategic plans. At the same time, we do see clients that tend to keep it confidential because they don't want to expose this fact to their own teams. They don't want it to leak to the suppliers. So for example, your product suppliers may not have to know about the sale of your business, but your marketing guys should know. They should help you structure the strategy and also look at the bigger picture. For us, marketing, the marketing aspect of the business is very important to analyze, to understand what are the long-term achievements and the assets that are being gathered throughout the efforts here. So it's yes and no, depending on the case.
Aaron, let me start by asking you, when you find out that there is potentially a client looking to sell, what comes to mind as an advertiser? What are you thinking about when you get wind that there might be an issue here related to a potential sale?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo a lot of what Michael and Joe said, is that we don't often hear it directly. Very often, how we'll kind of assess it or prepare for it is it's usually either it's rarely gradual, but either a dramatic or, you know, a pretty significant change in goals. So they might be, you know, aiming to get much more efficient, or it might be aiming to build up a lot more top of funnel to show growth, a lot of those things. And so I think that the challenge and what we would want to hear the most from clients, and what will really change our strategy the most and help us work together, is define goals and what we're trying to reach. Don't it's a common place where you know, folks will want to go to their agency with a tactical recommendation, like we need to increase the efficiency of branded search, or we need to bring this down. Come to us with a bigger picture business goal. You know, as Michal said, it's much more about the whole health of the entire business. While certainly a channel like paid search is a really good proxy into brand strength and brand growth, we and a lot of the other channels that I think all of us work on can help achieve a lot of other goals and show value in the business beyond just, ooh, we tweaked this little lever, so this looks slightly more efficient for the past couple of months. We can help paint a picture for longer term growth and business health. But again, we need really clear goals to aim towards. And the best way you can do that is by working with us on a strategy rather than, you know, a tactical improvement.
For the purpose of today's discussion, I want to make an assumption that all three of your firms, you know, you have clients that have gone through this exercise of having to prepare for sale, whether they're letting you know as early enough or letting you know at all that this is happening. I want to highlight the knowledge and the expertise that all three of you have around what can be done when a brand is preparing for that sale. And so for anyone who's listening today to the session, I want to be able to show that it is very important to engage with the agency and help them understand what stages you're going through, so that you can now leverage some of the expertise that we're going to bring to bear here in the following parts of the conversation. So let's just assume that there is that interaction. You are aware of what's going on. Even if it were a case that you were managing your own brand and you're having to look at how to manage PPC and SEM, let's proceed with that as an assumption going forward, because there's lots to learn in terms of how brands can use a change in their advertising strategy to do more of what they're seeking to accomplish as they prepare for that sale. So let me start by asking, let's assume we know that a sale is imminent, or there's a preparation for a sale. I'd love to hear from all three of you around what are some of the first things that you would be asking in terms of looking at budgets, looking at reports, looking at ways in which you're going to be interacting with the client to help them make better decisions. You know, spitball with me. You know, where do we start the discussion around what needs to be looked at in order to help the client better understand his or her options as it relates to advertising strategy? Michael, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think one of the most, you know, when launching and managing any product on Amazon, consideration of like what stage of the product is pivotal, especially when we focus in on the ad spend component and how aggressive we want to get with the ad spend. You know, are we trying to, you know, in many stages of a product's life cycle, you know, what kind of conquesting are we trying to do? What kind of competition are we trying to box out? You know, these really aggressive, sort of ambitious goals that you would want to do to sort of gain that market share and gain that share of voice, eventually shift when it comes time to, okay, now let's sort of maximize for profitability, for example, or excuse me, maybe we want to take fewer riskier bets right now. So let's focus on our obvious wins and our surefire bets to sort of maximize the financial component that an investor, that an acquirer will really be interested in. So having that conversation around what the composition of the advertising is in terms of how are we targeting, what we're targeting, how aggressive are we getting, where are the higher ROAS or lower ACOS areas of our account, and what does it mean to shift these priorities, and how does the composition of our campaigns and the structure of our campaigns change because of that? I think that's really important to know. And to sort of connect it to the first question that you asked, like, do companies tell their agencies or providers when they're getting ready for a sell? It's not necessarily explicit they need to tell us, but it's probably more so that they don't know how these goals should shift over time. And maybe they have an idea in their head, but co-creating that, I think, is really vital, because you do start with the strategy, and then you're sort of getting down in the weeds of what should our campaigns look like, and what kind of keywords should we be going after, or how aggressive should we be getting, and what are our safest bets for maximum profitability. I think those are how the campaigns begin to change. To put that in really specific terms, we're looking at ratios in terms of, how much ad spend do we spend on, branded terms. So looking at branded versus non-branded, looking at competitor terms versus our terms, looking at, looser targeting versus tighter targeting, those looking at higher in the funnel campaigns versus lower in the funnel campaigns, and having an analysis of that and an understanding of that can help answer that question of, like, how do we modify and how do we shift things.
So let me bring Michal into this conversation, because Michal, a lot of what you do when you first start looking at a brand, to going through this process of preparing for sale, you're looking at a lot of different types of ratios. I'd love to hear more from you around what is fairly typical for you to evaluate as you prepare to put numbers in front of potential buyers. What kinds of ratios or numbers make the most sense from an advertising perspective?
First of all, you start from the bigger picture. So you look at the growth and the profitability. So these are two kind of main parameters. And then you want to analyze where a certain profitability is coming from, whether the products are very cheap and then you expend so much on advertising, whether your level of dependency on advertising is super high, and without it, your business doesn't exist, and which means that no brand is out there at all. What is your customer acquisition cost compared to the lifetime value of a client? The ratio between the two, of course, is crucial, and also I forgot the ROAS itself, which sometimes it's more tactical, but it should be also taken into consideration. So these are kind of, if you're looking at certain parameters, okay, you want to see that, and then, by the way, there is no one conclusion of a certain set of parameters, because it all depends on your plans. Sometimes you may see a seller that invests a lot, and I'm using the word invest because sometimes they invest in marketing. It's not just a spend that generates sales, but rather investment or excess spend on advertising, hoping to create later on a more spontaneous growth of the business, organic growth. But at the same time, you need to, and then the next thing is to understand when is the time to sell the business. What's the exit desired point? Are you 12 months before, 18 months, or 6 months before? And even then, there is no one answer to what you should do. It's all depending on your story and what do you want to build there.
So just let me fixate on this, 6, 12, 18 months out before you're going to sell, depending on what your evaluation is of the company in terms of how how strong the metrics look in terms of positioning the company for sale. If you're seeing that the company may in fact be soft on a number of important dimensions, you're going to recommend to them to go back and to work on certain types of things. At the same time, if I'm Aaron or I'm Joe or I'm Michael, and I'm looking at we're going to need to make a change in the advertising strategy, it takes time to shift the boat, to move the boat in a different direction and say, okay, we're not focusing on sales, we're focusing on return, or we're focusing on expanding the catalog so that we can see that we no longer have one or two hero products, but we've got meaningful revenue from a lot of these. Making those shifts can take time. How do you think about your recommendations to brands around how long they should go off and do their homework before coming back to get serious about selling? How much of that plays into using advertising as an important tool for improving some of those metrics?
So, for me, I'm biased here. If you ask me when is the right time to start preparing for your exit, my answer will always be now. Now, I mean, if you want to sell your business in 2 years' time, start now. If you want to sell your business in 6 months, of course, you should start now, because time is a resource that you should use efficiently in order to take care of all aspects of your business. And as much as you use the time more, then you can achieve more. But assuming that you do want to sell your business, let's say in the near future, relatively the near future, or even in the longer term, maybe, if I need to kind of give my perspective on the right strategy here, I think that at the end of the day, whatever is good for the brand, for the business, is good for the sale of the business. The occasions in which you can really, get some value by financial engineering or by beautifying your financials one way or another, it's nice. But it's kind of the final touch. That's not the big thing. For us, working with the marketing experts, with someone who can look at the whole, at the business, means either, if you have time, please improve things. So make sure that you invest, each dollar that you invest is well invested in where it can generate the highest ROI. And also, in case that you don't have time to correct your strategy or to adjust it, at least identify what can be done better. And this helps also to craft the story about your business, which is part of what you're selling. In that sense, if you were getting, and I'm sorry, I'll stop in a minute, but if you are getting back to your first question on this webinar, that's another reason why, at least to consider, involve your CMO, let's say, or CMO agency in your plan to sell your business, because they should help you analyze everything that was done around marketing in this way to control the narrative of your business while you're presenting it to potential investors or buyers.
So if today is the right time to be starting to think about that process of preparing for sale, whether that actual sale is months away or years away, I'd love to hear from Aaron and Joe and Michael around. This feels a lot like the conversation that I had in the past when I was running an agency, where brands would come to us. We would look at their brand for the first time and we would say, oh, you don't actually have a formal strategy here. You're just spending money. You're getting some decent return on some of your campaigns, but advertising is sort of this tactical thing that you're running over here versus part of the juice that runs the whole business, that's tied into everything else you're trying to do. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about what is that infrastructure that you need to have around reporting and discussion and iteration and testing. What is it that needs to happen so that advertising is a strategic lever in your business versus a necessary evil where you're just spending money to buy sales? Help me think that through. Joe, Aaron, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I liked what Aaron said about, you want to create a picture for your brand of long-term growth and business health, right? I feel like a bunch of us have said this on the call, that this is a long-term investment, and advertising is a big part of that engine of growth. It's a series of levers that you can pull, and you need to be able to both sort of know how to use those levers to drive growth and also be able to articulate that, to your team, to potential buyers. I'm I've come from the tech startup world, so I did some other tech startups before Perpetua, raised capital a few times, and something certainly in the tech world around investing is that investors like to invest in lines rather than dots. So meaning, if you meet an investor for the first time or a potential acquirer, and you're just a snapshot, a single point in time, they can only get sort of some view of your business. But if you meet with them over multiple periods and they see progress every time, then they start to plot out a line and they can extrapolate out, where that business is going to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now. And so, this is probably obvious, but any potential investor, inquirer, or acquirer wants to envisage or model out where your business is going to be, and potentially with additional capital or expertise they plan to inject into it. And so by, I guess, showing that you have an understanding of all the different pieces of PPC and display advertising, how you can move those levers in terms of additional investment, moving investment, and data from the past, from test and learns that have shown what works and doesn't work, then you can present a story where, again, that acquirer can envisage, okay, there's untapped potential for growth here. There's, I can see there's market share that hasn't yet been captured, or this is a market that's growing. And yeah, that they sort of have more certainty around that investment. And I think life cycle is really important. Another piece of it is just knowing whether you're trying to sell a growth story or an efficiency story. And I think your strategy will be different depending on which of those it is.
Aaron, love to hear your thoughts on this as well, in terms of how do I help that brand put that proper structure in place to show that advertising is actually a central strategic part of their business?
Yeah, Joe, I really like what you said about lines versus dots. As we all know, and this is not a snapshot in time, it's a mountain that we all have to climb. I'd say one of the most important things to get done, and understandably, this is not necessarily something that will be done in 3, 6, maybe even a year, but get your data infrastructure in place, get a good incrementality product, get a good media mix model in place. We all work in a lot of platforms. Platforms will, of course, say to use our attribution, like trust Google's attribution, trust CAPI on Meta, trust everything on Amazon. They, of course, will always take credit for everything and make themselves look as good as possible. So I'd say getting your data infrastructure in place is tremendously important. I'd also say from a time perspective, and again, Joe, I like the idea of a growth story versus an efficiency story. Thinking of something like, speaking specifically to paid search, we tend to get typecast in the bottom of the funnel, that we're the people who play cleanup, but will always make all the money, which certainly search is very good at and has always been very good at. But search, both on Google, on Bing, on even on Amazon, is fundamentally a person asking a question. So you can think as to whether you're going to answer that question with a product for them to buy now, or whether you're thinking of being more of an educational marketer and building a longer term brand growth. Now, if you're, again, looking to sell in 6 months, that story probably won't be complete, because those efforts are going to take a little while to figure out that sort of horizontal expansion, as opposed to vertical expansion of just capturing more of the eyeballs that you could get. So again, I think most important, get data infrastructure in place as best as you can. But second of all, just understand the lead time and the payoff of the investment that you're going to make, and understand that they might be different. And so you're going to have to communicate that story to whoever you might be shopping the company to.
Michael, I want to bring you in on this, around this issue that many of the brands, at least 3, 4 years ago, when everybody was building brands and selling them as fast as they could, there were a lot of 1 and 2 SKU businesses, or businesses that really only had 1 or 2 SKUs generating most of the revenue. As brands are realizing that maybe there are situations where it's more important to diversify that revenue across a larger portion of the catalog, it takes time to invest in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th products. I'd love your thoughts around, as a brand prepares to sell and they realize, ooh, wait a minute, there's a lot of concentration of revenue here on 1 or 2 products. I need to start thinking beyond those 1 or 2 products. Advertising is going to play an important role there. I'd love your thoughts in terms of how you've helped brands take their ad dollars that they have available and at least portion off some of it, so that they can start to diversify revenue beyond just that 1 or 2 products.
Yeah, to piggyback off something that Aaron mentioned, I think having good conversations with clients and good mapping out of ad spend, ad spend itself, ad spend relative to total sales, and ad spend efficiency, and mapping that over time so that clients can see how these things are operate in relationship to each other. Trading efficiency for scale, for example, in the conversation of launching more products, right? We're scaling the company. So what does that generally look like? Having really good conversations about when you're in an expansion phase, you can generally expect decreased efficiency. When we are in an efficiency optimizing stage, where you could generally expect perhaps some lower volume of overall sales. So having good conversations and actually mapping out those situations, and it all comes back down to stages that the company is in. How risky do we want to be, in the sense of, well, if we launch $10,000 of new ad spend to gain more market share, some of it will convert very well, some of it might be neutral and might need more time to optimize, and some of it we might get rid of at the end of the testing phase. So having those conversations and understanding, and actually modeling out what it would look like if we launch a particularly new product and we spend X number of dollars on it, what can we generally expect from it? Sort of good, better, best, or red, yellow, green type scenarios can be super helpful for letting the company know, how risky do we want to be right now? How much do we want to push right now? And generally, a lot of times when those conversations happen and people see that, oh, if we launch another product, this could happen, this sort of red scenario, instead of this, the green would be great, but like the yellow and red, maybe not. A lot of times then the client decides, okay, well, I'm going to get ready for sale now instead of potentially launching more, because I don't want to take the risk. Or they might be very energized by that. That's exactly the kind of risk that I would want to take. So, selling a company to the founders can be a very, personal level decision. How much extra risk do they want to take to continue trying to grow the company, or maybe they have a really nice story to tell investors right here, right now, and it might not be necessary.
So one of the challenges that I went through with helping companies with PPC management is that often they're looking at an overall number and they're saying, we spend X dollars on advertising, we get this overall tacos or ROAS. And yet what we're talking about here is part of those dollars are going to go to certain types of campaigns, and part of those dollars are going to go to very different types of campaigns. And so, Michal, I'd love your thoughts here around, we're not really talking about one set of ratios. It may be one set of ratios for the growth part of your business and another set of ratios for the subsistence, the ongoing, 1-2 hero products continuing to do well. How do you present different groupings of metrics where one set of metrics doesn't look so good, but is being used specifically to drive one initiative, and another set of metrics is being used for other products to achieve some other goal? How do you show potential investors that there is this potentially diversified way of looking at the overall spend and the overall response?
So I think that the answer is embedded into your question. Actually, you need to slice the data and really be able to analyze how the marketing effort is serving different product lines and what do you want to achieve by each. Ideally, if you are now seeing yourself as investing in growing a new product, you should be able to present previous success stories with your existing line of products. But that's exactly how you should do it. If you want to be even more aggressive, at least at the level of the storytelling, not something that you should necessarily fall in love with as a valuation directly, but you should be able to even claim that in some cases your investment in marketing should be capitalized. This is not an expense, that's an investment. You're investing in brand altogether. So again, super, super aggressive, but at least this is how you can track the story. Yes. Say. I do, if that's okay, I want to add another element to the discussion. So
Please
it's not
do.
the direct answer to your question. Okay. There are, except for direct advertising, there is I think that the bigger picture should be looked at, and this includes also avenues in which you can promote sales with less investment in advertising, such as email marketing, okay, or social media promotion, or some mode of influencers that you can use, and potentially they could be very efficient. So these are kind of also things that it would be nice maybe to discuss today, because that's part of I think.
Yeah, we're going to talk about email marketing here in just a few minutes. Your job as a broker is to help find all the assets a company has and make sure those assets are actually fully utilized so that there's value being created from that. Just like all three of our advertising colleagues, they're looking for ways in which they can identify opportunities to take those dollars and do more effective things with those dollars. And so as much as the brand wants to figure this out by itself, the reality is if you have an ad agency working with you, certainly, we've said this before, it's good to get the ad agency involved in the strategic discussion around what is it we're trying to accomplish here so that we can get the most out of the dollars or the most out of whatever assets we have in the brand, so that we can do more and hopefully get higher valuation down the road. Let's come back to email marketing in a few minutes. I do want to dig deeper now into some of the specific parts of the funnel. To the extent that you're aware that there are changes happening in the brand and they're preparing for a potential exit, I'd like to talk about different parts of the sales funnel and what does it mean to spend dollars at the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel, as a brand is thinking through how to tell a better story to outsiders about the metrics that they're getting from their advertising. Aaron, do you want to take us through, when presented with a sales funnel and there are dollars going to all three, I recognize that some of this is not unique to brands that are preparing to exit. It's a conversation with all brands. But how would you be thinking about the sales funnel differently if you knew that there was potentially a sale coming for the brand?
Yeah, I alluded to this a bit ago. In thinking about we'll call it the payback period for your investment.
Yep.
A pure all the way top of funnel investment is going to take a while to pay off. There's going to be a lot of learnings that you're going to have to do. You're going to cast a wide net. You're probably going to catch some fish, and then you're going to figure out what to do and move them down the funnel and all that.
Yep.
So I think a lot of it has to do with the target sale time, which of course the time to prepare is now, but having an understanding of when that payback period will be, or at the very least have a way to model it out. Being in search, we're always a really good barometer for brand strength and brand growth. The simplest way is just to measure brand interest, measure the amount of people searching for you. And so that's a pretty simple way to provide a more linear, certainly not all the way, but a linear view of what is this doing to, what is our top of funnel advertising doing to our brand strength? And then the same way that you might look at your own sales funnel, if you're a B2B company, look at the progression, look at the impact downstream. So then you can identify which individual part of the upper and lower funnel are really making an impact. And so our strategy, as it pertains to folks who are looking for an exit, number one is to help them tell that story. It's to help say that, hey, we invested, we did this reserve buy in YouTube. We spent $100,000, marketed to everybody. Here's the down funnel effects. The down funnel effects are pretty rarely going to generate a positive return, but then you can have the nonlinear return. So from this, we learned ABC about our target audience, which means that we're going to be able to deploy that further down the funnel. The more upper funnel things are going to involve a lot more learning. The further down the funnel, the more it starts to look at, efficiency, demand capture, market share, things like that.
Joe and Michael, what would you be thinking about with regards to the sales funnel? The recalibrating dollars from one part to another throughout this lead up to a potential sale. Are there other aspects you wanted to share with us on this?
I mean, I like all these themes that have come up around, goals, life cycle, and then the different phases. So, Perpetua is probably a bit biased by this, and that, we're very focused on search, PPC, and so we would always advise first, like, make sure that your PPC advertising is as efficient as possible. Like, the last thing you want to be doing is like wasting any ad spend at all. By being as efficient as possible, starting to drive up GMV, that unlocks more budget that then you can kind of strategically deploy to growth. One thing I know Aaron mentioned, having your data infrastructure in place, which I totally agree with. One thing that I add to that is having a market share tool. So this would allow you to look at a niche or a category and say, one, how much of that market do I currently own? Is that market growing or contracting? So for example, if your hero product is 90% of your revenue, but you've already captured a lot of that market, you might start, hitting sort of what we might call an efficiency frontier. You've maxed out the efficiency of your advertising, your ACoS is great, but you're just getting diminishing returns as you spend more. And that's the time where you may need to start looking at more upper funnel, capturing more new to brand customers, or if you have secondary products that you can cross-sell, starting to experiment with more mid-funnel sort of cross-selling. To give one example.
Joe, if I can just interrupt for a sec. So this concept of understanding how big the niche market is that you're actually positioned to play in, this is a really interesting concept. When we look at this from an M&A side, being able to define how big your market actually is, and being able to say this piece by this piece is actually the market. It's not, oh, we sell beauty products and hence we're all beauty products, but we're, beauty products in this particular type of product, particular segment, and so on. That level of granularity, certainly on Amazon, there are ways that you can estimate some of that. I'm curious, Michal, when you're talking to companies, to what extent do you find companies even have this concept of define market share, like what market it is they actually play in, and what share of that they actually have accomplished?
Yeah, so first of all, this is crucial. And when you're looking at, if we look at on Amazon, it's relatively easy, right? You can measure your kind of market share within the category or niche. On Amazon, relatively easy, crucial to analyze your business, because this way you are able to understand what portion of the market is still waiting for you, and whether you are vulnerable because maybe you're the number one in your niche and others are taking market share and they will hit you someday, or you are left only with the growth of the overall e-commerce or Amazon play altogether. But when we're talking on multi-channel brands or brands that are exposed to the whole world, let's say, then if you are too small, then it's even irrelevant to discuss market share. But then we will look at the total addressable market. You need to understand what is the environment that you operate in. So yeah, it's crucial to understand that in order to analyze the potential of any brand.
Aaron, you're playing a lot off of Amazon. How do you think about helping brands think about defining their market share? What are some of the ways that you're helping them think that through?
Well, I'm happy that Michal mentioned total addressable market. I think serviceable addressable market is, if not more important within our marketing, because of course, speaking specifically to off Amazon paid search, you're going to get people of all different walks of life, and they're all going to use the same language. So trying to figure out which of those people you can get to. I know that we're going to get more into email marketing later on, but one of the nice things about about Google nowadays, and with cookies going away, not to beat a dead horse, as I'm sure everyone has heard it, but first party data is incredibly powerful, becoming more powerful, and probably the most underused thing that we see when we look into clients' businesses. So, again, rewinding a little bit further to a question a little bit ago, using your first party data is a really efficient way to cross-sell into a new product line extension. You already know who your best customers are. They already love you. Let's see how many of them will buy our other products. And so just taking advantage of that, taking advantage of all the data that's out there and all the insights. To a more linear answer to the question you're asking, I mean, the simplest thing to look at is impression share within search. Now, it gets calculated a couple of weird ways, and it's dependent on what you're already advertising for. But just taking a look at how much, how much impression share is available, how much of it you're capturing now, how much of it do you truly want to capture, and what's blocking you. So within Google, you can see impression share lost to budget, which just simply means you ran out of money, or impression share lost to rank, which might mean that there are other advertisers outbidding you. It might mean that the entire market's not a fit. So trying to figure out how you can leverage those resources, which are pretty freely available, assuming you're already advertising on Google, leverage those and use them as a barometer to see them rise and fall. It's a good way to see how much of the market you're tapping into.
So Joe and Michael, let's talk about first-party data within Amazon. One of the big new tools that's become available in the last couple of years is the use of DSP, and spending money on DSP. Certainly something that can be very expensive for a brand that doesn't otherwise spend that level per month. But if you can afford DSP, your ability to get extremely detailed information about who customers are and be able to test out new customer segments, that's something you can do with DSP that's much harder to do on the PPC side. I'd love your thoughts around to what extent will you be proposing to brands to use DSP as a research tool for finding new segments of customers?
I'd love to just give one illustrative example of what Aaron brought up from a client. So probably one of our most successful client exits was Hero Cosmetics, who sold to Church & Dwight in 2022. And they kind of started with like one product, their hero product. It was this pimple patch called the Mighty Patch. And then, quickly like kind of captured all of that market and, eventually just sort of like maxed it out. But developed a lot of brand affinity. And as Aaron said, had all these very like loyal customers, and then branched out into other skincare products. So they launched a SPF product, a retinol cream, and then were able to use the DSP to kind of very precisely, go after shoppers that had maybe purchased the Mighty Patch a specific number of times, had not yet purchased the retinol or the SPF, and start to target them. And now using kind of AMC and AMC custom audiences, you can do a lot of the stuff that I think you used to be able to do on D2C, but within Amazon. So look at very specific kind of patterns of shopper behavior, and then create custom audiences based on those behavior criteria, and then target them on the DSP.
Do you find, Michael, for clients that are primarily spending money today on PPC, how do you get them thinking about finding new segments on Amazon? If they are primarily experienced only in PPC, everybody would love to find new segments, but how do you do that efficiently when the only tool in your toolbox as a brand might be PPC?
I think it's interesting because depending on I'll take it back to what I mentioned earlier. It really is up to the life cycle of the brand. How risky do they want to get when it comes to branching out from sort of the calm waters of PPC, because it can be so measurable and we can sort of dial in. Perhaps one of my favorite, Amazon-based sort of first-party data tools, first-party defined slightly different on and off Amazon, but as first-party, the Product Opportunity Explorer from Amazon, will tell you, how many times a particular term got searched and what the particular search growth rate has been. They can use that information to assess is there even more, juice to squeeze out of the PPC in particular. They've added sort of capabilities to be able to evaluate competitors and assess what their particular conversion rate is, which really highlights, opportunity just within search, which I often find, personally, I've found that most clients are not particularly eager to branch out to DSP when they're ready to branch out for a sale, only because it does require a large capital investment, and it generally doesn't have the same ROAS as search on Amazon.
Let's talk about the other type of first-party data that Michal referenced earlier, and that is brands may have built email marketing lists. Assuming they've built email marketing lists using Amazon terms of service, or they've got their own direct-to-consumer site and they built email lists, making sure that they can use that information, use that customer information to be able to generate secondary sales, or possibly do research with those customers to find out more about future preferences. I'd love to hear stories from any of you around where brands have effectively used email marketing lists to be able to impact positively the way they think about their overall advertising strategy.
I'll share a personal example, and
Please.
this company didn't actually wind up selling, but it's honestly my favorite thing I've ever done as a marketer. I challenged myself to sell as many purses to men as I could. And so what we did is we took, it was a mid-level handbag company, and we took their email list, took a look at everyone who bought around the holidays, and simply just uploaded them to Google and Meta, Facebook at the time. Said, hey, find all the men, because 99% of the time they were buying for a gift for someone else. Now, holidays were a little bit easier, of course, because everyone knows when the gifting season is, but trying to think of things like, anniversaries, birthdays, whatever it might be, other times you might gift. So what we wound up doing, and this was frankly not the most sophisticated thing in the world, but we would just pull a list of everyone who bought 11 to 12 months ago, because odds are the person they were buying for is having the same anniversary coming up. And we would just push those, put a message out in the market that said, a message of convenience rather than a message of savings. Because if someone is last second searching for gifts, they're not as worried about prices because they might be in trouble and they might be too late. And so, again, that's a pretty simple version of just the way that you can do it and think about it a little bit more cleverly. And in that case, we expanded our targeting super wide on the types of sites or the types of keywords or whatever it might be, because if people were in this audience, if they were searching anything that was even remotely close to what we were selling, then we were able to get some cheaper clicks, some cheaper impressions for a really focused audience, and then stretch our line out and again get longer LTV because we have these repeat customers that might not have been day-to-day buyers.
So this email list, what was actually being managed on an ongoing basis. This was not an old list that hadn't been used in ages.
Correct.
What I'm
Correct.
inferring.
It was correct. It was a healthy list, can spam compliant, double opt-in, all those sorts of things.
Michal, for brands that you've worked with where there is an email list, I'm sure you've run into lots of situations where it's just a database sitting there. Nobody's used it in a long time. And oops, maybe we should do something with that and see if we can squeeze some more revenue out of it. How do you help brands get the ball rolling on that and realize that there is a potential asset there?
Since we have clients of both kinds in that aspect, so clients that don't use their email list at all and others that use it highly efficiently, we've started to really push hard on our clients to do something with those email lists. So just a client that I met last week, and he presented to me a summary of this year. He used his email list with Klaviyo and got unbelievable results. And today it is much easier. I think, I'm asking myself why sellers don't use actually, if you are a DTC seller, usually you will use your list. That's part of your play. But if you're an Amazon seller, you may not do that. And I ask myself, why is that? And one answer that I got is that this is just not part of their, ritual. This is not something that they're used to. But today, with ChatGPT and then Klaviyo and the different tools that are available out there, you should just do it. And also, as I understand, recently Amazon itself launched some tool or feature that allows you to send emails to your previous clients. That's an amazing thing to do. The nice thing is that once you're successful there, and you should find a way to be successful, these are sales that don't cost you anything. I mean, as of marketing, it's kind of the cheapest repeated client that you can get. So that's I think that this is just a must, something that sellers should work with. if not just to take, or in addition to that, to take the lead on and based on it to build the character or the lookalike potential clients to create your advertising campaigns. This is, if I understand correctly, that this is what Aaron referred to.
So Joe and Michael, have you had clients that have come to you with dormant lists and you've been able to resurrect them or at least tie them back in some way to a more efficient advertising effort?
Email marketing is a little outside of my area of expertise, but what I can say is that I've observed it really reduce the risk of launching a new product, or has really added momentum to a product that maybe was on the cusp of, greatness, to be able to push something forward in a particular way to give something a jolt of sales, whereas otherwise a competitor doesn't have that luxury to be able to tap into that audience, is excellent. So if I were to put, what an incredible asset to have to be able to tap into free traffic and give any particular one of your products a jolt, for sure.
Joe, thoughts from your firm?
Also a bit out of my wheelhouse, but first-party signals can be uploaded into Amazon Marketing Cloud, to AMC, and then can be used to generate lookalike audiences, which we've seen some success with.
So what is the tool that you use? Like, what kind of advertising are you doing off of that? Is it typically going to be DSP?
It's always going to be DSP. Yeah.
Always going to be DSP. Yep.
Yeah, that's one, I guess, limitation of Amazon Marketing Cloud right now, is it's only available to DSP advertisers, but that's something that we hope and believe Amazon is going to change this year.
Yep. Let's spend a few minutes. I want to talk more about profitability. When you're selling your business, you've got to be able to show you've got profitability, and to your point earlier, Joe, around a line of increased profitability, hopefully over time. But this question plays into what does it mean to define profitability when you're spending dollars on advertising? And I know we've talked about some of this already, but I'm curious, the profitability conversation with the marketing people at the brand is often one of the most peculiar conversations I've ever had, because we're never quite defining profitability beyond anything other than a tacos or a ROAS. And yet the kinds of profitability things that Michal is going to be looking to position to prospective sellers, we're going to have to get very sophisticated about what profitability actually means. And so I'd love to have a conversation here for a few minutes about what does profitability ultimately mean when we're looking at it at the overall company level versus the return on investment on a particular campaign. How should we be thinking about profitability overall for a business?
I think it's one of the main.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I think it's one of the most unique things about being an Amazon marketer, because there's so much data available to you. You're a little bit tied closer to the profit than I think if someone just has a Shopify store and someone's just doing Google Ads for a Shopify store. Because you have access to so much information from Amazon, you're tied very closely to the overall performance of a product. And one thing I always recommend people to do is build like a mini profit and loss per product that they have. How much are we spending per product across all the advertising types? How much ad revenue are we generating from those products? And how much total revenue do they bring in sort of organically? And, tack on a profit margin, and you have a mini P&L dashboard per product. So when we're thinking about optimizing for profit, you have access to all of your products, sort of net revenue, mini P&L, and that allows companies, the ones that are most successful, are sort of pushing and pulling on these levers of, we want to fund more advertising dollars to these products. We want to boost efficiency on these products, which can be incredibly effective at getting the results and getting the goals that we're looking for that would maximize the value of the company.
It feels like there's in some ways a responsibility, or at least an incentive on the advertising agency's side to help get the brand to a place where they do have detailed profitability information, so they can make better decisions around, do I allocate dollars to individual products versus to programs of products?
I think that,
how do you think about this process of getting a client to think through profitability with you?
I think that's one of the biggest differences between, being an Amazon marketer and maybe being an off Amazon marketer, in the sense of, because Amazon advertising is tied so closely to the organic sales, it really does influence organic sales and thus overall profitability more than maybe Facebook ads, or Google ads. You do Google search ads, you don't necessarily boost your Google organic, but on Amazon, that's not the case. So it is tied closely together. So to me, I recommend any Amazon marketer, no matter prepping for a sale or not, to think a little bit more full funnel to create a mini P&L for the products that they're optimizing, for sure.
Aaron, how do you think about profitability with your clients when you're talking about off Amazon?
Something that gets neglected from time to time when it comes to profitability. COGS, yes and no. I mean, that's usually backed into with an ROAS target that we have to deal with. But I think the effective discounts, shipping discounts, free shipping discounts, very often, Michael raises a good point that, on Amazon, everything is inherently connected right in the dashboard. It's product, here's sale. We don't necessarily have that luxury, so we rely on our clients to feed us the information back around, the back end money metrics, cost of shipping, freight costs, whatever it might be. And so finding a way that you can have that involved in all of your marketing strategies. So maybe a discount strategy is amazing. Maybe a $15 first new buyer offer is amazing. But where we have to work really closely with the client, and harkening back to my cry for better data infrastructure, is that we need to know what the down funnel effects of that are. Are we have a 15% off on Black Friday. Amazing. We had the best ROAS ever. But what happened down funnel? Did that 15% off actually cost us anything? Was this improvement in ROAS real, or was it just something that we saw on the front end? So I think having that conversation and understanding the non-marketing metrics that go into the cost of a product, that can help inform profitability. And I'd say same goes for longer term customer value. We might have loss leader products that we don't care about as long as we can sell them something later. I spent a lot of my career working towards finding new mothers and selling diapers. Diapers were always a loss leader, but it didn't matter because we would get brand loyalty and they would buy a bunch of other stuff. And so trying to understand those things at a product level, again, talking about getting a little bit more detailed in profitability and growth, not just understanding the linear, what was the value of this particular sale, but what was the longer term value and what's the impact on the business, and how do these changes that we have from a marketing perspective affect that bottom line and overall profitability.
Michal, I want to bring you in here, get your thoughts on what are some of the most successful types of discussions you've had with brands looking to sell, where they've got their act together to tell a good profitability story. What does that look like, and where does advertising fit into that profitability conversation?
So you're asking what is a good profitability story? Yeah. So
prospective buyers come in all different shapes and sizes, and yet there are going to be certain types of stories that make a lot of sense to those prospective buyers. And so what have you seen work well in terms of helping your clients prepare for sale to be able to tell that profitability story, the longitudinal story about profitability, and where advertising spend is being it works into that profitability story?
Yeah. So I'll start with a very short story, which is kind of an anecdote because it's so extreme in impact that that's a client of ours. We sold this business about 2 years ago. Gladly, we were able to prepare him for the sale 1 year ahead of the sale.
Okay.
And then we were able to identify that he's investing a lot in advertising in keywords, and this was an Amazon business. In keywords that he was highly rated, organically rated in. So he kind of threw money to the garbage practically, and he believed that by that he's generating his organic growth, which probably he did for a while, but he continued to behave in the same way also, on the longer term. He had at the time profitability of 18%. And he took our advice. He just stopped. I mean, he made a trial and he saw that his sales did not harm by that at all. And when we saw the business, the profitability was 26% just by this specific move. So this is really an extreme story, but even if you can improve your profitability by 1 or 2%, it's a lot. So that's one thing. I think that altogether the story around profitability is that you need to be able to find, first of all, not to be under any major risk. If you wish to live long for the long term. And also you should be able to finance your growth for the longer term. So it's kind of a balance between profit and growth. And at the end of the day, and market share capturing. So if you're able to really grow dramatically, capture market share in a manner which is defensible, for example, because you have some differentiation around your product, or you are creating your loyal customer and email list or whatever community around your brand, then it makes sense to sacrifice some of the profits or profitability towards creating growth. But otherwise, probably it should be better balanced. And at the end of the day, when you look to sell your business, you will be measured on financial parameters. So either you will get paid a certain multiple over your profit or a certain multiple over your revenue, which is also available depending on the brand and category. But even then, you should be able to justify it, and it is all justified by numbers. So that's my.
So let me ask you, Michal, do you have examples of brands where their advertising agency did a particularly good job of helping them prepare the story, tell the story with numbers, and be in a position where the agency was really significant in that preparation stage?
I think that good marketing agencies play a crucial role in the development of a business. I think that sellers should be minded to the fact that they don't necessarily manage only PPC, if this is not as only an Amazon business, but rather they manage their marketing efforts. So it's all should be orchestrated one way or another. Either by someone in-house or by the seller himself if he is capable of doing that, or if not, then by the agency themselves. And here we have 3 representatives of great marketing agencies. So I think that I can only assume that all the people here are great partners to do such kind of thinking. But that's super important, and the ability to contribute to the successful exit eventually is high if you manage your strategy right. So that's and yes, I think they play a crucial role.
Aaron, Joe, Michael, I'd love your closing thoughts on the aspects of what we've talked about. Where do you see the biggest challenges for you as an agency helping brands get the story right as they prepare for that exit? Where can your firms be most effective in helping brands get that story right?
I think just setting them up for success as soon as we start working with them. So as has been said a bunch of times, all the things that are going to lead to a successful sale are going to be the same things that lead to building a successful business.
Yes.
Yes. And that's, understanding those levers of growth and ideally having the time to really be able to do test and learns.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, building long-term, short-term goals with your marketing partner, absolutely vital. And then definitely setting up those mini P&Ls so that you can track, are you hitting those goals? Probably my 2 biggest takeaways here.
Aaron, your thoughts on how agencies can help brands with this critical stage of their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think this might sound a little obtuse, but treating it as much as you can as a partnership, just kind of going full circle to, I think, where we started. We can certainly work well with tactical goals, but if you give us a strategic direction, then you'll get a lot more from your investment in an agency. We have a lot of brains. We have a lot of experience. We've seen a lot of exits. And so odds are high that we've probably seen a scenario like yours before. So of course, understanding there might be confidentiality things, but as much as you can share with the agency and pick their brains, do it. That's what you pay us for.
Yep. I want to thank Aaron Levy, Joe Rideout, Michael Erickson, Michal, Oron. Thank you all for joining us today. There will be a recording of today's session available after the webinar. We thank you all for joining us. Take care and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, James.
Thank y'all.